What if a fleeting glance in a shadowed bar exposed a betrayal soaked in blood? Could a single pendant drag a Mafia kingpin from the grave of his regrets, forcing him to face a son he believed was ashes? Peter Stone was a name that whispered death through the veins of New York's underworld, a Mafia boss whose empire was forged in the fires of ruthless ambition and unyielding control. But those who dared look past the veneer of his power saw the fractured shell of a man, a widower in his late 50s, tormented by a void that no throne of crime could fill. The disappearance of his wife and newborn son, erased in a single savage night. 17 years ago, they had vanished during the height of a brutal power struggle. Their car found twisted and charred on a desolate riverbank outside Queens. No bodies emerged from the wreckage. The cops labeled it a tragic accident, but Peter knew better. It reeked of treachery, a knife twisted by hands he once trusted. He had buried the anguish under mountains of vengeance, letting it fuel his ascent. But it never truly died. Every shadowed alley, every fleeting silhouette of a young man clawed at the scar, reminding him of the family ripped away. What secrets could a simple name like Evelyn still hide after all these years? After years in the shadows, dodging the remnants of his shattered domain under a forged identity, Peter finally slunk back into the city that had birthed his legend and his downfall. The air felt thick with omens, as if the streets themselves conspired to unearth what he had long entombed. He wasn't here to reclaim his crown. He sought answers, or perhaps the final nail for his own coffin. That night, Peter shunned the gilded dens where deals were sealed in blood, craving instead a veil of anonymity, a brief respite from the ghosts nipping at his heels. Drifting through the neon haze of Manhattan's financial district, his eyes snagged on a discreet establishment with a subtle glow. The Velvet Room, a bar that cloaked its patrons in luxury without prying eyes, where fortunes flowed as freely as the liquor. No questions asked. As Peter pushed through the door, a soft chime pierced the low hum of jazz, marking his entry like a warning bell. He chose a stool at the end of the mahogany counter, one shrouded in dim light, offering a vantage over the room while keeping him half invisible amid the polished brass and velvet booths. The bartender approached soon after, a young man in his early 20s, dressed in a crisp black vest and bow tie. His movements precise, almost predatory in their efficiency. His face held a quiet intensity, eyes dark and unreadable, a faint weariness etched beneath the professional poise. "Evening, sir," he said, his voice smooth but edged with distance, notepad poised. Peter met his gaze, and for a split second, a chill gripped him. Something in the young man's sharp features, the set of his jaw, stirred a phantom echo, like a memory clawing its way from the depths. Could this stranger hold the key to Peter's buried past? "Whiskey, no ice," Peter replied, his words clipped, betraying nothing. The bartender nodded. "Coming right up." Peter leaned back, his eyes tracking the young man as he worked the bar with effortless grace, mixing cocktails for a cluster of suited executives, trading terse nods with regulars, his hands steady amid the clink of glass and ice. There was a resilience there, a quiet steel that Peter recognized all too well, forged in fires unseen. When the bartender returned, sliding the tumbler across the wood with a practiced flick, Peter caught it, a flash of silver dangling from a chain around the young man's neck, glinting under the bar's amber lights. It was a small pendant, circular, etched with faint lines that twisted into the outline of a wolf's head. Peter's pulse hammered. the room tilting as recognition surged like venom through his veins. "That pendant," he said, his voice a low rumble that cut through the jazz like a blade. The bartender paused, glancing down at it with mild surprise, his fingers brushing the metal instinctively. "This? It's nothing special." Peter leaned forward, his eyes locked on the relic, heart thundering. "If you don't mind me asking, where did you get it?" The young man, Smith, his name tag read, shrugged faintly, a shadow crossing his features. "It was something from my father, or so my mom said. She gave it to me when I was a kid. I never knew him myself." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot, igniting the fuse Peter had thought long extinguished. His mind reeled back to that fateful day, the hospital room bathed in sterile light. Evelyn's exhausted smile as he placed the matching half around their son's tiny neck, a symbol of the Stone legacy, unbreakable and fierce. The other half still burned against his own chest, hidden beneath his shirt like a secret wound. Peter's grip tightened on the glass, knuckles whitening. The bar's murmurs faded, replaced by the roar of blood in his ears. Was this fate's cruel jest, or the unraveling of a lie that had defined his exile? He forced his voice steady, but inside the shadows stirred, hungry for truth. "Your mother, what was her name?" Smith hesitated, eyes narrowing slightly. "Evelyn Hart. Why do you ask?" The name struck like a bullet to the gut, confirmation wrapped in agony. Evelyn, his Evelyn, the woman who had vanished into the flames, taking their child with her. Peter's world blurred at the edges, the pendant's glint mocking him. He shattered the silence with a tremor in his voice. "And where is she now?" Smith's expression darkened, a flicker of old pain surfacing. "Gone. Cancer took her a few years back. It's just me." Peter stared, rage and grief colliding in a storm he could barely contain. The glass slipped from his hand, cracking against the counter with a sharp report that made Smith flinch. Fate had ambushed him here, in this gilded cage, dangling the impossible across a divide of polished wood. But, in the underworld, revelations came with prices, and Peter knew, deep in his bones, that this one would demand blood. He rose abruptly, tossing bills onto the bar, his mind already plotting the next move. "Keep the change," he muttered, turning toward the door. But as he stepped into the night, the weight of the pendant, his half pressed against him like a promise. The hunt had begun anew, and this time the shadows would yield their secrets or consume him whole. If this opening twist has you gripped, like if you're wondering what Peter's next move is, share with a thriller fan. Subscribe for more amazing stories and comment. Is the pendant a curse or a salvation? The shattered glass, scattered like fragments of a life long splintered, drawing stares from the bar's scattered patrons. Smith's eyes widened, a mix of concern and wariness flashing across his face, as he grabbed a towel to mop the spill. "Sir, you okay? That cut looks nasty." Peter barely registered the sting on his palm, blood welling from a shallow gash. His mind was a whirlwind, the name Evelyn Hart echoing like a ricochet in an empty chamber. Evelyn, his Evelyn, the woman whose touch had once softened the edges of his brutal world. Hart? A flimsy alias, a veil thrown over the truth to hide from monsters like him. The pendant, that damned silver wolf, wasn't a coincidence. It was a taunt from the grave. What lies had Evelyn buried to protect her son from a world like Peter's? He forced his gaze back to Smith, the young man's features sharpening into painful focus. The slope of his nose, The intensity in those eyes, they weren't echoes. They were mirrors of his own youth, before the bloodstains set in. "Tell me more," Peter rasped, his voice a gravelly demand masked as curiosity. "About your mother. What did she say about your father?" Smith hesitated, glancing around as if the bar's velvet walls might close in. The jazz had dipped into a somber saxophone wail, amplifying the tension. "Not much," he replied cautiously, his tone laced with the guarded edge of someone who'd learned young to keep secrets buried. "She said he was gone before I could remember. Involved in some bad stuff, dangerous people. We moved around a lot because of it. She worked odd jobs, kept us off the grid. Always said the pendant was his, a reminder that blood runs deep, even if it's poisoned." Poisoned. The word sliced through Peter like a switchblade. His thoughts plummeted back to that rain-slicked night 17 years ago. The phone call from Victor Russo, his right-hand man, voice thick with feigned grief. "Boss, it's Evelyn. The car. It went off the bridge. Explosion on impact. They're gone." Peter had raced to the riverbank outside Queens, the air reeking of charred metal and diesel. Flames licked the wreckage, illuminating the twisted frame sinking into the murk. No bodies, just assumptions. He'd knelt in the mud, roaring at the indifferent stars, convinced it was a rival hit. But betrayal? From within? Victor had stepped into the power vacuum seamlessly. His condolences, a serpent's hiss. How deep did Victor's treachery run? Peter's fist clenched, the cut weeping crimson onto the counter. Smith was still talking, oblivious to the storm brewing across from him. "She got sick fast. Cancer ate her up. Left me with nothing but this thing and a stack of unpaid bills. I've been on my own since." His voice cracked just a fraction, revealing the boy beneath the bartender's poise, a resilience forged in abandonment, much like Peter's own ascent from the streets. The intrigue coiled tighter in Peter's gut, a serpent awakening. This couldn't be random. The pendant's wolf crest, halved and hidden, was a breadcrumb trail leading straight to his son. His son. The thought ignited a firestorm of disbelief. How had they survived? Why hide? And Victor, had he known all along, staging the accident to cripple Peter emotionally, clearing his path to the throne? Peter's silence stretched, heavy as a loaded gun. Smith's brow furrowed. "Look, mister, if this is some weird joke—" "No joke," Peter cut in, his eyes boring into Smith's like drills. The young man recoiled slightly, sensing the undercurrent of danger. Peter's hand trembled as he fished out a wad of bills, far more than the drink cost, and slapped them down. "For the mess!" He stood abruptly, the stool scraping like nails on a chalkboard. The bar's warmth felt suffocating now, the jazz a mocking dirge. Without another word, he strode toward the door, the chime mocking his exit into the chill Manhattan night. Outside, the city's pulse throbbed, horns blaring, shadows slinking between skyscrapers. Peter leaned against a lamppost, breath fogging the air, the cut on his hand throbbing in rhythm with his racing heart. Obsession took root, deep and unyielding. He needed proof, records, anything to confirm what his blood screamed. Victor Russo would pay if this was his doing. The hunt wasn't over. It had just clawed its way back from the dead. Caught in the suspense? Like if Peter's obsession resonates, share this video, subscribe for the unfolding drama, and comment, "Will the truth set him free or destroy him?" The city's neon bled into the rear view as Peter steered his nondescript sedan toward Queens, the skyline shrinking like a fading threat. 17 years had clawed by since he'd last crossed this bridge, but the route etched itself into his bones, a map of betrayal he couldn't erase. The night air whipped through the cracked window, carrying the faint rot of the river. Stirring ghosts he thought he'd outrun. What truths still lurked in the ashes of that fateful night? He parked at the overgrown pull-off, the spot where sirens had once screamed into the void. The old river bridge loomed ahead, its rusted girders twisted like skeletal fingers reaching from the murk. Charred scars still marred the railing, faint echoes of that inferno. Peter approached on foot, gravel crunching under his shoes like brittle bones. The wind howled off the water, mocking him as he gripped the rail, staring into the black depths below. Here they'd hauled up the wreckage, Evelyn's car, a mangled husk devoured by flames. No bodies, just assumptions. Peter's mind dragged him back, unbidden. Evelyn's laughter, light and defiant, filling their penthouse on lazy mornings. She had been his anchor in the storm of deals and double-crosses, her eyes sparkling as she cradled their newborn. That day in the hospital, sunlight slanting through the blinds, he'd split the silver pendant, the wolf crest, symbol of the stone lineage. One half around her neck, the other for the boy. For protection, he'd whispered, pressing it into the infant's tiny fist. Blood remembers. How could a symbol of love become a harbinger of loss? The memory shattered as another intruded. The phone ringing in the dead of night. Victor Russo's voice on the line, slick with false sorrow. Boss, it's bad. Evelyn and the kid, they're gone. The car went off the bridge, exploded on impact. Cops are calling it an accident, but Peter had bolted from bed, racing through rain-lashed streets, arriving to flames licking the sky. Victor had been there already, his hand on Peter's shoulder, a viper's touch. We'll find who did this, he'd promised, eyes gleaming in the firelight. Now, standing on the bridge, the pieces clicked like a chambered round. Victor had everything to gain. Peter's family was his weakness, the chink in his armored empire. Remove them, stage a tragedy, and the throne opened wide. Victor had ascended swiftly after, absorbing territories, silencing whispers. Had he known they survived? Orchestrated Evelyn's flight to break Peter utterly. The thought ignited a cold fury, veins icing over with resolve. What price would Victor pay when the past caught up? Peter tore himself from the bridge, driving to the cemetery under a moonless sky. The graves waited in a forgotten corner. Two markers, stark and unadorned, etched with names that haunted him, Evelyn Stone and Alexander Stone. Empty coffins beneath, buried in a farce of mourning. He'd stood here once, rain mingling with tears he denied, vowing vengeance on faceless enemies. Now he knelt, fingers tracing the cold stone. I buried nothing, he muttered to the wind. But I'll unearth everything. Rising, Peter's jaw set like granite. Smith, Alexander? Was the key that pendant, the smoking gun? Confirmation demanded risks, old contacts, shadowed alleys, perhaps even Victor's doorstep. Facing enemies meant dredging the underworld he'd fled. But the obsession burned hotter than any fear. Blood called to blood, and Peter would answer, even if it dragged him back into the abyss. The city lights beckoned from afar, promising answers laced with peril. He slid into the car, engine growling to life. The hunt sharpening into a blade. Haunted by these ghosts? Like if the betrayal chills you, share with fellow mystery lovers, subscribe for the next twist, and comment, "Is redemption possible for a man like Peter?" The Velvet Room's amber glow welcomed Peter like an old accomplice, its jazz a velvet shroud over secrets. He slipped in 2 nights after Queen's, blending into the counter's shadows as a regular same stool, same whiskey neat. No more shattering glass. Restraint was his weapon now. Smith worked the bar with mechanical precision, oblivious to the predator in patron's clothing. What hidden bond could form between a mafia ghost and an unsuspecting bartender? "Evening," Peter nodded, voice neutral. Smith poured without flurry. "Rough day?" Small talk, a feint. Over the next 3 nights, Peter returned like clockwork. Each visit peeling back layers. Whiskey flowed. Words followed, halting at first, then freer. They spoke of life's brutal arithmetic, survival's cost, the weight of ghosts. "Lost my way young," Peter murmured one night, staring into his glass. "Choices that stick like tar." Smith leaned on the bar, sleeves rolled, revealing the pendant's chain. "Yeah, Mom always said choices define you, or break you. We bounced cities like ping-pong balls, Philly, Boston, back to New York. She was kind, you know. Soft voice, iron will, kept secrets locked tighter than Fort Knox." Peter's pulse quickened, but he masked it, probing gently. "Must have been hell on a kid." Smith's eyes darkened, polishing a glass with absent vigor. "I was 16 when cancer took her. Fast, like a thief in the night. Left me scraping by doing odd jobs, this gig. No family, no roots, just her stories. And this." He tapped the pendant, silver wolf glinting mockingly. "Tell me about her," Peter pressed, voice low, the bar's hum fading to irrelevance. Smith exhaled, a rare crack in his armor. "She'd hum old lullabies, warn me about shadow men chasing us. Said my dad was one of them. Powerful, dangerous, gone before I drew breath. But she left this note with the pendant, tucked in a shoebox. Read it after the funeral." He paused, fishing a crumpled paper from his pocket, unfolding it with reverent care. The words stared up, faded ink on yellowed stock. "If you ever find the man with the other half, forgive him." Peter's hand trembled, whiskey sloshing as the words struck like a garrote. Evelyn's script, elegant loops he knew from love letters stained with blood money. Forgiveness? For him? The room spun, memories crashing, her fleeing not from rivals, but him, shielding their boy from the Empire's jaws. Every syllable confirmed it. Smith was Alexander Stone, flesh of his flesh, hidden in plain sight. The note was her final mercy, a bridge across the abyss. Could forgiveness heal a father's deepest wounds? "You all right, mister?" Smith's brow furrowed, concern etching his face, Peter's face mirrored in innocence. Peter steadied, forcing a nod, the tremor buried deep. "Just hits close. Sounds like a hell of a woman." "The best," Smith agreed, pocketing the note. "I wish I could have saved her." The bar clock ticked midnight. Patrons thinned. Peter slid bills across, heavier than before. "Keep telling the truth, kid. It's rare." He rose, heart pounding a war drum. Connection forged in stolen glances, blood humming unspoken. Outside, rain slicked the streets, but clarity burned fierce. Evelyn's words sealed it, no doubt now. Tomorrow, he'd arm the revelation. Consequences be damned. The shadows waited, but so did redemption's edge. The truth is unfolding. What will Smith's reaction be? Like, if the emotional layers pull you in, share this saga. Subscribe for more, and comment. Can blood ties overcome years of deception? Peter's nights blurred into a haze of shadows and whispers, his regular visits to the Velvet Room masking deeper digs. Old contacts, faded ghosts from his empire, fed him scraps. Birth records under aliases, Evelyn's trail vanishing like smoke after the accident. But the underworld had ears, and Peter's prodding rippled outward, stirring silt in waters he thought still. Word reached Victor Russo in his fortified penthouse atop a midtown skyscraper. The city sprawled below like a conquered kingdom. Victor, now the unchallenged Don, sipped aged scotch, his face a map of scars and cunning. Rumors slithered in. The ghost boss is back, stones sniffing around old haunts. Victor's lips curled into a sneer. Is Peter Stone alive? The man he'd buried in grief, not dirt. How had the old lion slipped his chains? Victor knew the truth, a secret festering like an open wound. 17 years ago, he'd orchestrated it all. The rigged car, the explosion, Evelyn's coerced flight with the brat. Peter's family was his Achilles' heel, a distraction in the power grab. Eliminate the weakness, shatter the man. Simple calculus. Evelyn had begged for her life, agreeing to vanish forever, raising the boy in obscurity. Victor had let them live. A twisted mercy. Ensuring Peter's descent into vengeful isolation cleared his path to the throne. But now, Peter resurfacing, circling the boy like a shark scenting blood, it unraveled everything. Exposure meant mutiny, his empire crumbling under questions of betrayal. He couldn't allow it. Victor summoned his enforcer, a hulking shadow named Marco. Tail Stone. Confirm the whispers. Reports trickled back. Peter's hotel stakeouts, bar visits, fixation on a bartender named Smith. Victor's eyes narrowed at the photos, the kid's face. A spitting image of young Peter. Threat confirmed. What would Peter sacrifice to claim his blood now? That night, Peter returned to his dingy hotel room, mind churning with plans to confront Smith. The door clicked shut, sealing him in stale air thick with cigarette ghosts. He flicked on the lamp, freezing at the mirror above the dresser. Shattered glass spiderwebbed from a lodged bullet, dead center. Pinned beneath, a grainy photo of Smith behind the bar, mid-pour, oblivious. Scrawled in red marker across the frame, "Stay away, or the boy dies this time." Peter's blood ran cold, the message a venomous echo of the past. Victor. It had to be. The bastard knew. Had always known. Rage surged, fists clenching until nails bit flesh. This wasn't just a warning, it was war declared. But the boy Alexander was in the crosshairs now. One wrong move, and history repeated. Blood on Peter's hands again. He snatched the photo, crumpling it, breath ragged. The shadows had resurfaced, hungry and personal. Retreat or strike first. Damn the cost. Outside rain hammered the window like accusations. Peter pocketed his pendant's half. Resolve hardening. Victor had stolen enough. Time to reclaim what was his, even if it meant dragging the devil into the light. The warning shot has been fired. Will Peter back down or ignite a war? Like, if the tension has you hooked, share this video with a thriller enthusiast. Don't forget to subscribe and comment. Should Peter confront Victor head-on? The Velvet Room's lights dimmed to a spectral glow as closing time crept in, patrons trickling out like fading echoes. Peter lingered in his corner stool, nursing shadows instead of whiskey, the warning photo burning a hole in his pocket. Victor's threat loomed, but tonight, truth demanded precedence. The bar emptied, jazz silenced to a hush, leaving only the clink of glasses as Smith wiped down the counter. "Closing up," Smith said, not looking up. His movements rote, weary. Peter rose. The doors chimed distant as he flipped the sign to "closed." Smith's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Hey, mister, we need to talk," Peter interrupted, voice a low thunder. He approached the bar, the mahogany barrier about to crumble. Smith's hand hovered near a hidden alarm, tension coiling. What storm was this stranger unleashing now? Peter reached beneath his shirt, pulling free his pendant, silver wolf, halved and scarred. He placed it on the counter with deliberate care, the metal clinking softly. "Take yours out. Put it next to this." Smith froze, confusion etching his face. Slowly, he unclasped his chain, laying the twin beside it. They fit seamlessly, edges aligning like long-lost kin. The wolves merged into one fierce crest, the Stone family emblem, unbroken and snarling. Smith's breath hitched, fingers tracing the union. "What? How?" Peter's eyes locked on his, steady as a loaded chamber. "Because you're my son, Alexander. I'm Peter Stone, your father." Disbelief shattered across Smith's features, morphing into a blaze of anger. He snatched his pendant back, chain rattling like chains of fate. "You're telling me you are my father? Peter Stone? The mobster? The killer? The guy from the headlines, drowning the city in blood?" Peter's voice cracked, guilt fracturing the iron facade. "I was told you both were dead. That night the car, the fire. I buried coffins filled with air, empty graves for an empty heart. Every sin I committed after, every deal, every hit. It was because I thought I had nothing left to lose. You were gone. Evelyn was gone. I became the monster they said I was." Smith's face twisted, emotions erupting like a suppressed volcano. Grief for the mother he'd lost alone, rage at the father who'd never come, confusion swirling in the revelation's vortex. "You expect me to believe this? Mom ran from you, from your world of guns and graves. If you're my blood, why the hell didn't you find us? Why let her die scared and broke?" His voice rose, fists pounding the counter, the crest trembling. Tears welled, unbidden, mixing with fury. How could one pendant rewrite a lifetime of lies? Peter reached out, but Smith recoiled, clutching the pendant like a lifeline or a curse. "I can't. This is insane." He stormed toward the door, shoving it open into the rain-slashed night. The chime, a final, mocking toll. Peter stood alone, the merged crest mocking him from the bar. The emotional quake had passed, but the aftershocks promised war. Victor waited in the wings, and now, with the truth unleashed, the boy was more vulnerable than ever. Peter pocketed his half, resolve igniting. Blood had spoken. Now it demanded protection. The revelation explodes. Will father and son ever bridge the divide? Like if the emotional clash hits hard, share this intense moment. Subscribe for the climax ahead. And comment, can Peter earn forgiveness, or is it too late? Victor's patience snapped like a frayed wire. From his penthouse lair, he barked orders to Marco. "Grab the kid! Lure the ghost out!" Smith, oblivious, storming home through rain-veiled streets after the revelation, never saw the van screech up. Rough hands clamped over his mouth, a chloroform rag stifling his fight. Bound and gagged, he awoke in the trunk, heart pounding as tires hummed toward doom. What fresh hell had the old man's secrets dragged him into? The ambush site, an abandoned dockyard on the Queen's waterfront, rusted cranes clawing at the sky like skeletal sentinels. The same forsaken spot where Evelyn's car had plunged into flames years ago. Victor's handiwork then, as now. Fog rolled off the river, shrouding goons in spectral mist. Smith tied to a piling, bait in the trap. Victor paced, cigar glowing like a demon's eye. Stone will come and end. Peter got the call, an anonymous rasp. Dockyard, come alone, or the boy bleeds. Rage ignited, but cunning tempered it. He slipped into the night, twin pistols holstered, a ghost haunting his own grave. The dockyard loomed, memories assaulting him, flames devouring the car, Evelyn's scream echoing in his nightmares. He crept through shadows, guns drawn, each step a vow for redemption. How many more sins before the scales tipped? Gunfire erupted as Peter breached the perimeter, Victor's men unleashing hell. Bullets whined past, splintering crates. Peter rolled, firing back with lethal precision, dropping 2 thugs in sprays of blood. "Alexander!" he roared, spotting Smith struggling against ropes. Victor laughed from cover. "You should have stayed dead, old friend." Peter charged, a whirlwind of fury, dodging lead to reach his son. He slashed the bonds with a knife, shoving Smith behind a container. "Run!" But a sniper's round cracked, aimed at Smith. Peter lunged, taking the bullet in his shoulder, pain exploding like fire. He staggered, but fired wildly, chaos reigning as loyalties fractured. In the melee, Marco, Victor's enforcer, turned, pistol to his boss's back. "You promised me the Empire," he snarled, pulling the trigger. Victor crumpled, eyes wide in betrayal's sting, poetic justice, his own venom recoiling. Gunsmoke cleared, bodies littering the dock like fallen kings. Peter slumped against a piling, blood soaking his shirt, vision blurring. Smith knelt, torn between flight and the man bleeding for him. Peter's hand gripped his son's, voice a ragged whisper. "You were never supposed to live like me. You were supposed to live free." Consciousness faded, the river's murmur a lullaby of unfinished wars. Sirens wailed distant. But for now, blood had bound them in the shadows. The shadows bleed. Who will survive the betrayal's aftermath? Like, if the action pulse pounds, share this high-stakes showdown. Subscribe for the redemption arc, and comment, "Can Peter escape death's grip once more?" The hospital room reeked of antiseptic and regret. Monitors beeping like fading heartbeats in the sterile gloom. Peter Stone lay pale against starched sheets, shoulder bandaged, life leaking from him in slow drips. He'd survived the dockyard inferno, barely paramedics hauling his ghost from the blood-soaked pier. Victor's empire crumbled in his wake, Marco's betrayal exposed, underlings scattering like rats from a sinking ship. But survival demanded more than breath. It demanded atonement. Could a dying man's empire be reborn as ashes? From his bed, wired and weak, Peter orchestrated the end. Old lieutenants visited under cover of night, faces gaunt with fear. "Burn it all," he rasped. voice gravel over glass. They obeyed, the ghost boss's final command. Warehouses torched, ledgers incinerated in oil drums, safe houses stripped bare. Evidence of rackets, hits, blood money gone in pyres lighting the night sky. Loyalists freed, debts forgiven, chains of omerta shattered. No more blood oaths. Peter's legacy, poisoned fruit, withered to dust. The Stone Empire dissolved, a king abdicating for redemption's throne. Word spread through the underworld. Peter Stone was dismantling his ghost. Rivals paused, enforcers vanished, the city exhaling as shadows lifted. Peter watched from his window, pain a dull roar, satisfaction bitter as bile. He'd built on bones. Now he buried them. Days blurred into a haze of morphine and monitors when Smith Alexander appeared in the doorway, silhouette rigid against the hall's fluorescent glare. Rain streaked the glass behind him, mirroring the storm in his eyes. He stepped in, fists clenched, uncertainty carving lines on his young face. No words at first, just the weight of blood between them. What words could bridge a grave's worth of absence? Peter shifted, wincing, and beckoned him closer. Sit. Smith hesitated, then perched on the chair's edge, gaze averted. The silence stretched, heavy as the joined pendant in Peter's palm, wolves reunited, crest whole. You came, Peter murmured, voice cracking. He pressed the silver into Smith's hand, fingers trembling. You don't owe me forgiveness, just remember, I tried to make it right. Smith's thumb traced the emblem, metal warm from Peter's grip. Memories flickered, Evelyn's lullabies, warnings of shadows, the note's plea. Rage simmered, but softer now, tempered by the man before him. Broken, not unbreakable. The Empire's fall, the bullet taken for him. It chipped the walls of deceit. He met Peter's eyes, searching the mirror of his own soul. No reply came. Smith stayed, silent sentinel by the bed, hand closing around the pendant. That quiet, neither embrace nor rejection, was forgiveness forged in restraint. A nod to blood's stubborn pull, Evelyn's mercy fulfilled. Peter's eyes fluttered shut, peace seeping through pain. Legacy wasn't thrones or terror, it was this, a son who lingered. Outside, dawn clawed the horizon, shadows retreating. Redemption whispered in the beeps, a father's war won not in blood, but release. Redemption dawns. Has Peter earned his son's silence? Like if the legacy shift moves you, share this heartfelt turn, subscribe for the epic close, and comment. What does true forgiveness look like for these two? Weeks bled into a fragile calm, the city's pulse steadying without the Stone Empire's shadow. The Velvet Room reopened under fresh varnish and brass, its wounds from the storm healed in polished gleam. Smith Alexander Stone no more. Just Smith Hart stood behind the bar, calm and confident. A free man, unchained. No more bouncing cities, no more ghosts whispering warnings. He poured with fluid grace, patrons filling booths with laughter, jazz humming soft redemption. Could a bar's glow truly bury a blood-soaked past? Behind the counter, a small framed photo anchored the shelf. A younger Peter and Evelyn, radiant in sunlight. Her neck graced by the silver pendant. Wolf whole, love unbroken. Smith had found it in Peter's hospital effects, a relic of joy before the fall. It watched over the room, silent witness to legacy's quiet pivot. Tips flowed. Regulars nodded approval. Smith ran the place now. owner in spirit, if not deed. Evelyn's iron will echoed in his steady hand. Outside, fog clung to Manhattan's streets like lingering regrets. An old man in a dark coat paused at the glass, silhouette etched against neon haze. Peter Stone, alive but exiled, a ghost by choice. His empire's ashes scattered, enemies silenced or scattered. He wandered fringes. No throne, no terror, just survival in anonymity. Through the pain, he watched his son command the bar, pride flickering in weathered eyes. Smith moved with his mother's kindness, his father's steel free as promised. Peter nodded once, a solitary salute, then turned into the night, coat swallowed by shadows. Exile's price, proximity without possession. Inside, a lull hit as the clock struck 10. Smith wiped the counter, gaze drifting to the pendant around his neck. Joined wolves glinting under bar lights. A chill prickled, as if blood hummed across the divide. He glanced toward the door, sensing the echo of departure, the weight of unspoken farewell. "Goodbye, old man," he murmured, voice low, laced with finality and faint warmth. No tears, no chase, just acceptance. Evelyn's note fulfilled in the hush. The camera lingered on the pendant, silver catching the amber glow. A glimmer of bloodline unbroken. Redemption, hard won. Fate's quiet mercy etched in metal. Lights danced across the crest, wolves fierce, yet at peace, symbol of sins atoned and futures unchained. The jazz swelled softly, patrons oblivious, as the bar pulsed with new life. Shadows outside faded. Inside, legacy breathed free. Legacy gleams, has fate granted true mercy? Like if this closure hits deep, share the full saga with a drama lover. Subscribe for more epic tales. And comment, what story should we unravel next?